Honestly, I wish surgery was on the table much earlier because my quality of life it's just been complete 180, right? And I kind of wish that was something that was talked through in a more detail. And it might have been that my consultant at the time could have said, look, these are all of the treatment options available for you. Obviously, as a young man or young individuals who are out there who are having, maybe looking at surgery, it is a big thing. It is life-changing. And I think that's quite key. It is life-changing. But my life changed for the better, so much better. I wish that had been put on the table earlier and sort of discussed through.
Welcome back to the Talking Shit podcast, presented by Colitis Unfiltered. My name is Frank Tabering, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Ant, who got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis at age 19 in London, the UK. So Ant, welcome.
Thanks, Frank. Oh, absolute pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to talking shit, as you said. So it'll be great.
So then let's talk shit, and let's talk shit straight from the beginning. I always say, the first question that I typically have, because why not start at the beginning? And that is symptoms, how your IBD journey started. Tell me a little bit about what that moment was like for you when you noticed that, hey, something is definitely wrong here.
Wow. I'll tell you what, I'll try and paint a picture. This was back in 2008. So for some listeners, this was well before social media was a thing. Instagram wasn't really around. TikTok was just the noise that your clock made on the wall. It wasn't a thing at all. So back then, my symptoms were just really bad diarrhea to start with. I remember just sitting there being like, this isn't normal. Every time I go to the bathroom, this is not great. And then the frequency just surged. I was going a couple of times a day, and then it surged to 10, 15 times a day. Then passing blood came, then the pain came. Just those first sort of moments, if you will, I remember feeling really worried, really quite frightened, something's really not right. And then go to doctors, and they were just yeah, it'll be fine. Take your standard over-the-counter medication, you'll be okay. And then fast forward to 2020, had my large colon removed, and now I'm, publicly talking about shit and showing my stoma bag all the time. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. You said, so you went to the doctors and they say, take over the counter medication. Was it just a regular doctor? Did you really go to a GI? How did that evolve? Because 2008, social media was not around, but IBD was around, right? Or at least you think so. So how did that develop and evolve?
So it was, I was at university at the time, and I just started as well, and I wasn't feeling great. And then it was sort of Christmas time where I kept going to the university doctor, which is a pharmacist, and they were have some just standard, we call it Imodium in the UK, just standard medication, and hopefully that should clear. It's just a bad bout of diarrhea. Plus, being a university student, my diet wasn't exactly great, probably too much alcohol and partying. So I thought that's what it will be. It'll calm down. And then it went on and on and on. And when I went home in December for Christmas time. And I went to my local GP where I live, a proper doctor. And he said the same thing, look, let's just take it step by step. But everything seems to be okay. I then came back in Easter time and went back to my GP and said, nothing's changed. And they were like, right, we'll do some stool samples, we'll do some tests. But after doing all those tests, they said nothing was wrong. And that was a bit for me that I was like, this doesn't make sense. You can clearly see something's wrong. I'm in pain, I'm passing blood. This can't be normal results. And they said, look, there's nothing more. We can either look at changing your food or your diet, maybe tweaking that, but there's not really much else we could do. We can try and refer you to a specialist, but the waiting list will be a very long time. And I remember just chatting to my family about it, and they said, look, just let's go private. And I had an initial consultation with a doctor who just sort of talked me through what the procedures would be. Then had a colonoscopy, and literally after the colonoscopy, they were like, yeah, you've got severe ulcerative colitis. And I was like, cool. What's that? What is this? Do you know what I mean? And the doctor just said, look, we're going to put you on some medication. We'll give you some prednisolone steroids to calm the inflammation, then we'll look at, long-term treatment. And I remember being like, I was 19 at the time. I was like, yeah, fine, whatever, no issue. And just saw it as you kind of do when you're a young adult. I'm invincible, it doesn't matter. And I think looking back on it now and really reflecting, I didn't really take on like the enormity of this is a lifelong condition. Like this isn't going to go away. Even then, when someone said it was chronic, I assumed that I was like, oh, that just means it's more painful than acute, if that makes sense. So yeah, that was it. That was the start of the very long journey that we've been on ever since.
So there's definitely, let's say, at least a period of months, right, that elapsed between, your first symptoms and the first colonoscopy, right, based on sort of like your timeline. Just, as a 19-year-old, don't know really what's going on though. Like, how did you navigate this pain? Because obviously the symptoms during those months didn't stop, right? It's just a continuous sort of suffering. Like, what was that like for you, especially at 19 as well?
Well, yeah, and like I just started university, trying to make new friends, going to my lectures and stuff. I think it's like most things, right? When most people in this space will just put a brave face on and then just power through. And that's just what I did. I remember there were a couple of times where, like, honestly, I was with friends. Like, I shat myself a couple of times, like, genuinely was like, oh, sorry, guys, I'm just going to go. And that, again, it's not through like design or anything like that. It's just like, I'm not feeling right. Like, oh my God, what's happening? And then, you run off. But that was it. Just put a brave face on and then hopefully things will be okay. Because I remember having exams as well. And this is like fast forwarding a little bit to the summer when I was doing my first year exams. And I had such a bad IBD flare. Nothing was working. And I remember just being like, I can't do my exam tomorrow. Like, I can't do it. I'm in so much pain. And just being like, it'll be all right. It will be all right. And like having to like manage my own emotions a bit with it was challenging, but it was always, I don't know, it was always like, this is just part of that journey, right? It will get better. I've just got to, navigate this at the moment, and then fingers crossed things improve.
Yeah. So you definitely kept a positive mindset, the way it seems, and then because a lot of IBD flare-ups diagnoses, for a lot of people, life sort of kind of comes to a halt a little bit based on the severity of the disease, right? But you had university, so you powered through. Now, obviously, we want to get to the point of where you are today, and that includes surgery. So take us maybe to the next step now, which is diagnosis there. You know what ulcerative colitis is, up to the point where I guess you've been told, hey, it's time for surgery. What kind of treatments were you on? What time elapsed? And then ultimately, what led to you having to have surgery?
I was in remission for quite a long time with the mesalazine. I had like one tablet I would take a day. And I was like, right, I'll have that forever. And I was like, perfect, this is great. Life's easy. I can do what I want. It was all good. And I remember being on the treatment, and it took 6 months for it to really start working. And then I remember being, at the time I worked in Sainsbury's, and I was closing up the shop with one of the managers, and I went to the toilet, and I remember having just a normal shit. And I was like, oh my God. And I text my family and text my mates being like,
best feeling ever.
Honestly, best feeling ever. Could not be happier. And then from there, it was just like, I'd have periods of normal remission. It'd be a couple of months, and then I'd have a flare up. And then I'd go back to the GP, and they say, right, have some more steroids. And it was kind of just that constant balancing act of like fine tuning is the way I looked at it. It was like my dosage always needs to be tuned, and then we'll see where it gets to. I then did, from there, we moved on to azathioprine because everything stopped working. And I remember having a conversation with my consultant then, and he just said, like, these are quite heavy drugs. These are drugs that you give to people that are having like organ transplants. Like he said, very similar to people who have like kidney transplants. And I was like, oh, wow, that's... So I've got to take this forever. And he was like, yes. I remember sitting there thinking, like, this is getting more serious. And he just said, yeah, we'll take the medication. Again, we'll find your dosages. And it was just literally next step up in the ladder, if you will, before surgery. Fine tune it, periods of remission. Then I moved on to cyclosporin, which was another one. And I remember getting like just very weird side effects. Like my eyes would just dehydrate. Like I had really sore eyes all the time. My hands would shake. Hair started falling out. So I was like, look, I'm going to go change these. And then the doctor said, if you're not getting on with these, we can look at other things like I don't know, Vendolizumab or whatever it's called, methotrexate, and all these other things. And then it started to go into like anti-cancer categories. And I was like, this isn't great. And then we literally hit a brick wall. My doctor just said, look, we don't really know. Let's see what other drugs come out. So he put me back on azathioprine and was like, let's just play the waiting game. And I said, enough's enough. What's the point? The solution here is get rid of your colon. And then I don't have to be on these drugs. I don't have to have this way of life. I don't have to have the poor quality of life that I have. Surely that's the next logical step, right? And he was like, yeah, we can do that. He's like, but you will elect surgery. He's like, you're not unwell enough to have surgery. And then again, I sat there going, but what do you mean? Like, I'm so unwell because I'm going to the bathroom like 30 times a day. None of these medications are working. We're now going back down to the drugs that weren't working. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And he's like, look, this is just what we can do. We can manage your symptoms as best we can until we do surgery, or we look at all the other drugs that we can try. It's up to you. So yeah, I chose, let's go with the surgery because I just want to get it done. And it was initially, we can have this in maybe like 3 months or so. So you've only got to wait like 12 weeks. You're on the waiting list. I was like, perfect. Okay. Not too long. Then it turned into over a year. I think it was like 13 months or so. Because I'm not an emergency case, right? And there are other people who need to have that surgery who may have to have like preventative surgery for cancer because they may have to have their bowel removed. So every time I'm on this list, I'm getting to the top. Here's your surgery date. Great. 3 weeks time. Start going through all the prep. Drop back down. Let's move 6 weeks. Up the ladder, drop back down. And it was just that constant cycle for 13 months until finally had surgery. I want to say the 12th or 13th of February. I can't remember the date exactly. I should do. But 12th or 13th of February, 2020.
The word surgery has sort of this stigma, and I think for a reason attached to it, that, this is the last resort. This is what nobody wants, or this is what people are afraid of the most, especially, people who get diagnosed with IBD, who actually find out a little bit more about Crohn's, about colitis, obviously, or if the doctor does a really great job sort of at explaining, the different treatment options and, climbing the ladder. And let's face it, nobody really wants to get to surgery, right? Unless they have to, or unless their life is just so bad that that's the only option left for them to reclaim their life. So what would you kind of tell the people who might face surgery in the future, right? As somebody who has experienced it. And that's my first part of the question. My second part of the question is, how did you deal with that? Did you have any fear attached to it? Any sort of, uncertainty of what was to come? Because, going to a doctor and saying, hey, I want surgery is very much different from the doctor coming to you and saying, hey, we really need to do the surgery now. Otherwise, who knows what may happen.
Yeah, 100%. So to the first point, people who are facing surgery, I think to your point you said earlier, doctors usually introduce it as this is the last resort. And honestly, I wish surgery was on the table much earlier because my quality of life it's just been complete 180, right? Like, and I kind of wish that was something that was talked through in a more detail. And it might have been that my consultant at the time could have said, look, these are all of the treatment options available for you. Obviously, as a young man or young individuals who are out there who are having, maybe looking at surgery, like, it is a big thing. It is life-changing. And I think that's quite key. It is life-changing. But my life changed for the better, so much better. I wish that had been put on the table earlier and sort of discussed through. One of my consultants said it as soon as I stopped azathioprine and started looking at other drugs. He was like, we can do it. He was like, but I won't force you. And he was the first doctor who was like, we can do it. And I remember sitting there at the time just being like, ooh, that seems a bit scary. I won't do that. But at that point, there wasn't many people on social media necessarily talking about surgery and things, or like not as many that I saw. Now, I'm on a podcast with you, do you know what I mean? So there's so many more people talking about it, which is amazing. I've seen that transition firsthand. So I think to people who are facing surgery, really have a conversation about it. Speak to others who have gone through it And that will hopefully alleviate some of your fears. Like hopefully having this conversation and having listening to this podcast may also give you that. And secondly, one thing that helped me, which then comes to your second part of the question, is what did I do? Because I elected, I had time to mentally prepare. Whereas if you are an emergency patient, you don't necessarily have that. And that's where the accepting your body and stuff can be very challenging. I bought some test kits from some stoma suppliers. So in the UK, you can actually get them for free, but I messaged some companies and said, do you have any trial kits? Because I'm due to have surgery and I want to essentially get familiar with what my body is going to look and feel like. So I got a couple, they sent me some. I just put a stoma bag on for the day, filled it up with water, walked around, like went to the gym with it on, and I was just like, this is what my life's going to be like. So I was like, okay, like it's not as... The first time I saw a stoma bag, I was like, oh, it's going to be like wearing a nappy, isn't it? Like it's going to be so embarrassing. Not at all. And I was like, it's going to smell. Doesn't smell. Like you can't tell that I've got a bag unless I physically show you. And I think those are my biggest concerns. And then body image. What am I going to look like? Fortunately, like the bags I use, and I haven't prepared this, but the bags I use are black. So they look cool, right? And that's why I'm like, oh, that's not too bad. And that sort of really helped mentally for me, get me in a place where I was like, this is happening. I've chosen to do this. This seems to be like the right decision. And I'll never forget waking up after surgery. Your stoma, for those of you, if you're going to get one or have one, like it's huge. It's ginormous. And that is like, whoa, what's that? And then you've got a big clear bag. Obviously, that's for doctors to look at. It shrinks down. But I remember it just looking at it being like, oh my God, this is crazy. But I wasn't in pain. And I was in hospital for 19 days, I think it was in total, because my stoma fell asleep and then we had to wake up and it was this sort of cycle. But I had no urgency and I couldn't get my head around that because at that time I was 30. So for a third of my life, I was like, I have to run away and go to the toilet. And I wasn't. I was just sat there like, okay, well, this is working. And I can't really feel this. I can notice the bag's filling up, but that's it. And that was such a weird transition. And even now, like I can't remember like that sensation, that pain of having to run off to the toilet all the time. But that was my everyday. So yeah, so that massively helped. And then connecting with other people. There's a few people I reached out to who had stoma bags. And I was like, what's it like? And they just said, honestly, Ant, my life is so much better. They're like, you'll get like the first couple of weeks, obviously, is going to be this major surgery. You'll have hiccups. You'll have like teething problems. But honestly, you will be so much better off. And I'm really glad I listened to them because, well, I am. So there you go.
Sure. That's really great. So in a sense, rehearsing really did help you prepare. It's a very interesting story. I mean, this is the first time that I talked to someone who literally, like you said, ordered a trial kit and rehearsed living with it before actually experiencing it. So rehearsal can work definitely, and then yet you wake up, you see the stoma for the first time, you're like, whoa, it still obviously takes a little bit of adjusting and sort of overcoming the change, at least visually. Now, do you consider yourself cured?
Oh, what a question. No. Yes and no. I still have colitis. It's still in my body. So I had a subcolectomy, so I still have my rectum. So I have to monitor that because that's where my colitis was active. So it could return. I know in a couple of years, I'm going to have that removed because A, it's a cancer risk because I've got an organ or part of my organ that isn't working. And B, if the colitis flares up in that area again, not really. But for the main, it's interesting. I'd say yes because I haven't got any real symptoms at this time. But I've had all the side effects of years and years and years of taking very strong medication. So I guess it is. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I asked the question because typically it's not really easy to say, yes, I'm cured, right? And surgery is actually not always the cure. I mean, yes, we're talking about colitis, but a lot of Crohn's patients that I talk to as well, then typically it's like, no, it can still be there, even though they might live with a stoma. So, but definitely, I think you put it very well. So it's no secret, you mentioned it earlier as well, you're extremely active online as well on social media, and that's part of your efforts, to raise awareness, but also to share your story. And I think sharing our stories is really the core, the heart of awareness. In one of your posts, I don't know exactly remember when it was, but in one of your posts you wrote, or you said, in a kind of quote, "Some days are easier and some are harder." I would love for you to tell me about the hard ones.
Yeah, it's interesting because I try to, as best I can, portray a very positive attitude and mindset, just generally towards things. So even with like what I post, I want to show that even after life-changing surgery, battling chronic conditions, like you can still have an amazing life, right? And I think for me, that's always going to be the important part, because there will be people out there that will be struggling. The days that I struggle with, I'll be brutally honest, I hate my stoma sometimes. So that's why I'm like, am I cured? That's another part of it. I'd reframe cured to, have I got my quality of life back? And the answer is yes. I've now got a different route that I've taken to get back to where I was before. But there are days where I'll get really sore skin. You do the best things you can. I'll get sore skin and I'll itch my skin, and it's like, oh, this is crazy. Blockages. So for those you that don't know, you do have to be careful what food you eat. You can't just shove it all in. And I've had 3 or 4 about 3 or 4 major blockages in my life. So I've been hospitalized because of it. I sometimes just hate how my bag sits. So, for example, when your bag is full, you can tell you've got a big bag, right? You can just tell. And you might be walking somewhere and the wind is blowing at you, and it just looks like you've got this massive lump just sticking out of your top, right? And sometimes my stoma, like, although I love it, it's quite a long stoma. So it's about the size of my thumb, just underneath, right? And I see other people who've got stomas and they're like, oh, theirs is smaller and flatter. Like, I wish mine was like that. And there's just times where I'm like, sometimes I'm just very aware that I've got a bag. And those are the challenging days, because I sit there going, I'm not cured. Do you know what I mean? That's my point. I'm not, I've still got this. So lots of people ask me normally, like, do you consider yourself disabled? And that's something that's quite pertinent in sort of from our side. And I'll say yes, because I've got this big medical device that I have to physically wear all the time. And those are days where I'm like, although surgery has helped me, I wish this wasn't the only way to get to where I am now. So that's it really.
Yeah. So you very bluntly said, some days I hate my stoma, but it's with you for life. So how do you mentally make peace with it? How do you make peace with your stoma?
I mean, to be fair, it's like anything. I'm just frustrated. It's emotional. So I'll end up just feeling like, look, I'm annoyed about something. It'll be fine. I'll go away. Like, and then I'll take my mind off it, go and do something, whatever. And then forget why I was angry. Do you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things. It's more of an emotive reaction. Because I'll then go and do something, like I'll go to the gym or go for a walk or do whatever. I'm not having to plan my whole day or my activity around how close is the nearest toilet. And I think that's the hardest thing. I say the hardest thing. The solution to those harder days is, where am I now? Where was I? And being reflective and looking back to go, there were days where I couldn't, like literally I couldn't stand. Like I'd just have to pass out and go to sleep, to I'm deciding what I want to eat and I'm going to go cook dinner, or I'm going to go to the gym, and all these things I couldn't really do before surgery. So yeah, there are days where I'm like, oh, but bottom line is saved me from so much worse.
I would like to know from you, especially since you've had the diagnosis at 19, then a surgery around like the age of 30, now you've had it a couple of years, how has colitis and your ostomy as well changed you as a person?
Before even having like stoma cert or even being diagnosed with colitis, like I was just a normal, happy-go-lucky individual. Couldn't care less. I'll just do anything, try and get away with like being naughty or whatever, stuff like that, like, typical teenager, right? And I think having this condition like colitis immediately made me think I need to grow up. I know it sounds a bit weird, but like this is serious, so we need to start thinking about this seriously. But also like how everything doesn't matter other than your health. Like your health is seriously the most important thing. Like jobs will come and go, partners, girlfriends, boyfriends, whomever, they can come and go, but your health, bottom line, is always going to be the most important thing. And then getting a stoma, that changed me to be so much more vigilant of inclusivity, how people have differing needs, and how like a lot of the world is not catered for people who have differing needs. And I, again, like going into disabled toilets, going into like general toilets, things like there's still a huge stigma around these sorts of things. And yeah, again, to point back to my bio, my mission is to be like, look, the bag life's not bad. And I've been very privileged to be able to not just go on podcasts like yours, but work with medical companies. I've gone and spoken in Parliament in the UK. I've been on the news, and it's like I have an opportunity to try and progress things and make things better. Whereas if I hadn't had this condition, probably wouldn't be doing any of that. I'd probably just be going down the pub with my mates. Do you know what I mean? So I guess it's also given me a bit more of a unique selling point as well.
And a purpose, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like I've always been somebody who wants to give back. Like my whole career path has always been around how can I help others. I've had people reach out to me, like generally just through messages, like stuff like all these sorts of things. I remember once, it will always stick with me. I had a young mum whose daughter was going to go have surgery, and she was really scared. So she was like, "Can I call you?" And this was during the pandemic. So I was like, "Yeah, sure." So she called me, and she was really upset, cried down the phone. I was like, "It's all right. Like, this will be what happens. Like, they'll go into theatre, and then this will happen, and this will happen." And it had nothing to do with like the daughter I think it was the daughter who was having surgery. It was the mum, and I was just chatting to her mum. And she was, after it, she was like, "You've been so helpful. Like, everything you've done is just incredible. Like, thank you." And that's it. Everything we do is just to help that one person.
Yeah. It's very interesting you say that. And I'm going to share a very similar story that happened to me recently as well. And then I'm telling this as well to really sort of lift the spirit of positivity and this importance of awareness, is that I had somebody recently who was struggling. And then I asked, because this is one of the questions I always ask, like, so how proactive is your specialist, right? Your GI? And basically responded and saying that not very much, takes a long time to get an answer, it's not very clear. And I basically said, I think what you should really consider is try and change, right? Try and find somebody else. And in the end, the person came back and said, "You know what? Thank you so much, because I just, tomorrow I'm going to call my network and see what other sort of clinics I can have," right? Sort of like just finding this tiny little courage to do something very simple, which is picking up the phone potentially and, try and find another medical team, another provider, right? And then I thought about this and I was like, in the end, it's really not about views. It's not about engagement. It's about like, here's one day been able to sort of help or motivate or inspire one person to do something that could potentially change something positively in that person's IBD journey. I mean, that's what a great purpose, right?
Yeah, 100%. And look, what an amazing story for you as well. Like, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
For sure. Yeah.
And you're right. That's the main thing, is if you can help just that one person, and they don't even have to reach out and tell you, right? What you're doing, especially with your amazing podcast, is people will be listening to it and they'll be going, "Oh, I didn't think of it that way around," and "Oh, maybe I should try and do something different."
Yeah,
that's it, right?
Yep. That's it. And that comes through the stories of people like you and others who go through this journey. So that's really great. Now, if you could go back to the 19-year-old self, based on everything you've experienced, based on everything that you've learned now through this journey, what would you tell yourself?
if I knew the journey ahead was going to be exactly the same, I think I would simply say embrace it. Don't be scared, it'll be all right. And there'll be hard days, but you'll pull through. And where you end up, like today, as of recording, everything you ever wanted in your life, you will get. So I've got a beautiful wife, I've got a house, I've got an amazing job, I am doing some incredible things on social media. And at 19, those are all the questions and the doubts and the fears that I had, right? Am I going to be able to do this? Will someone love me for my condition? All these sorts of things. And the answer is yeah, all of those things and more. And I think to anyone that's listening to this, that's just the start of their journey, like it's natural, you're going to have doubts, you're going to have worries, but everything will work out.
That's a very positive way, and it's exactly how I'd like to end the show. But before I let you go, there is one question that I have, and it's a very difficult question. I am going to ask you that question because earlier when we were talking about this, are you cured, not cured, you said yes and no. So you didn't say yes and you didn't say no. So I'd like to know from you, based on sort of your hopes, your sort of optimism, do you think that we'll see a cure to IBD in our lifetime?
Yes. I think we will through the advancement of, I think AI is going to play a huge part in the medical scene. There's so many advancements that have taken place in the last 5 to 10 years anyway. Like there's more drugs available on the market. Stoma care is improving. And I think generally our understanding of our sort of gut, our biome that we have, all these sorts of things, our health is going to improve. So yeah, in my lifetime, I think there would definitely be a cure. The only reason why it wouldn't be is just because there's other conditions that then take the priority in that list for funding and research, and I think we'll have more people talking about it. And you know what? It might be something so simple that it's like, don't have olives. All right, cool, amazing. Then no one gets it. It could be something so simple, or don't use this type of plastic and microwaving stuff, or do you know what I mean? And I'm really hopeful that the work that obviously you're doing, that other people are doing in this space, will help at least push that narrative forward. So that our, the next generations, my children, I haven't had them yet, but hopefully I will, won't have to go through the same. So yeah. What about you? Do you think there'll be a cure?
It's interesting to say, because you seem so convinced, and I'm very positive about this as well. Even though sometimes I look at the world, and it's tough to stay positive, but in this domain as well, I say yes. Now, the one thing I always say is, will it happen in my lifetime? I am not so sure. Things sort of tend to move a little bit slower sometimes based on the reality. But then again, there's a hope. So I'm confident there's something positive is going to happen. I just hope that it will not be dragged through lots of political or bureaucratic things, and that people will actually be able to benefit from a cure, a really, really positive development. But I do also believe that it is going to come. And listen, you and I are both young still, so who knows, right? So maybe it will be in our lifetime, right? So
maybe we change the question. Maybe we change it to, will everyone have access to the healthcare for their stoma care and things? And I think if we can at least strive towards that, then a cure should hopefully come after that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of optimism needed in that space as well. So we'll send that optimism into the universe, and we'll hopefully get to that point quicker than potentially the real cure, or while we wait for the cure. So Anne, thank you so much. This has really been fascinating. Obviously, this is a topic that we could keep on talking about for hours and hours, but I'd say we'll just 100%. Leave that to our respective audiences, right, and the community. So we can continue the conversation there. We're going to also have your social media handles in the show notes so that people can reach out to you and bring on all these great questions that they have. From my end, I wish you nothing but the best moving forward, with your life and your health as well, and keep doing what you're doing, because it's really, really important. And I think you're definitely one of the major players in this field. So keep it up, man. And
thank you. I'm going to go red. That means a lot. Thank you. But same to you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep getting amazing people on your podcast, and yeah, just keep smashing it.
We'll do it together. Perfect. And thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of Talking Shit, presented by Colitis Unfiltered. I'm Frank Tabering, and if this hit home or hit your gut, do us a favor, subscribe to the show, and follow us at Colitis Unfiltered on YouTube, Substack, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Reddit. We'll see you soon for more inspiring stories from the bathroom floor.